All right, ladies and gentlemen, today is Tech Tuesday. I apologize, we're having some technical difficulties linking up with everything, but today's a special Tech Tuesday because Justin is not here today, guys. He is out at NASA or SpaceX, I can't remember, but he's with our boy Elon, and they're trying to figure some cool stuff out, ride heights on the SpaceX. But today we're going to be talking about ride heights with Mitchie, and we're going to see how we are going to check ride heights on all different types of vehicles depending on your tire size and also depending on the size of your portal.
And where to measure.
And where to measure.
The
so
most important part.
We will go over to Mitchie real quick. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. We are here and we're ready to rock.
Cool. So Josh, if you want to look at the board here real quick, basically we're going to start off by giving you guys the goal measurements, if you will, that we put all of our time into setting up for the tire size that you guys have and the ride heights that we're shooting for. So I'm going to start over here, Josh. Basically all your Polaris, you have your XPs, you have your XPTs. This is going to be Walker or Fox. It's going to, basically the chassis is the same car for both those additions, if you will. 2 and 4 seat, it does not matter on that side of things as well. But basically, if you have a stock tire, which is going to be a 29-inch tall tire, we're going to be shooting for 13.5 inches in the front and 13 inches in the rear. Basically, what this does is every tire size you go up is about a ½ inch in your increment from your measurement of your ride height. So if you look over here, you go up to a 30-inch tall tire, you're going to be 14 inches in the front, 13.5 inches in the rear. A 31 to a 32, you're basically 15 inches and 14.5 inches in the rear. Now guys, this is just a guideline. This is kind of a starting point, a good shooting point for you guys to get to start off of. This does not mean that when we send the set of shocks to you guys, if you sent them to us to have the work done, that you put this on your car, those are the magic numbers that are going to be there when you put them together. You have to check this stuff. It is super, super, super important. Ride heights are, I mean, I always say it, the most important part of the initial setup. So again, you can't just slap them on the car and go drive it and expect that, you know, ride height number to be exactly where it is. It's a guideline, it's not a rule. Adjustment wise, stuff like that, we can get into that here in a little bit of as far as how to adjust it to, you know, obtain and keep those ride height numbers. But making sure that you check that stuff, you get it to those numbers when you get it back to us. If you're adding or subtracting weight, very important on that side of things. So Can-Am is a little bit different. Same thing though, it's gonna basically pertain to your 2 and 4 seat as well. X3 XRSs, we're kind of just going and, you know, not super into detail on every single car, but just to give you guys an idea of, you know, starting points for measurements of ride heights after you do a spring kit or anything like that. So stock tire on an X3, now there's some variances here, but most of them are 30 inches. Your front, we're going to be shooting for 15.5 inches. The rear is going to be 15. When you jump up to a 32, you're going to start 17 inches in the front, 16.5 inches in the rear. 33, there's a little bit of differences there, but 35, I went with that one because that's more common than like a 33 right now. 18.5 inches in the front and 18 inches in the rear. We'll get into the portal stuff here in a minute, but basically starting points for that is kind of what we want you guys to shoot for. We test every single car when we design the kits at those numbers. It works out pretty well there. But kind of jumping back into the checking of the ride height, making sure that that's where it is. I can't stress that enough, guys. We get asked all the time about what should my ride height be with this tire, where should my ride heights be at, loaded, unloaded, stuff like that. It is very, very crucial to the ride quality of the car. So we got 2 cars in here right now. We'll show you guys where we measure at on a Polaris XPT newer one, and then we have a Honda right over there that will show you guys where we measure at on those. It's very similar across the board, wouldn't you say, Steve, as far as measuring points?
Extremely similar. The only variance would be the X3, which we will get into when we go look at an actual X3.
Yep. And the only thing that changes on that is the front measurement. So, but yeah, we'll explain that in a little bit. So for me, the most important thing is, let's say you shipped us your shocks, you get them back in the mail, you're getting ready to put them on the car. Put them on the car. It is a 2, 3, sometimes 4-person job to set the ride heights depending on what information you guys gave us for the initial setup. So if obviously the driver's in it, but if you're going to carry a passenger more than 80% of the time, we want to have the passenger in the car. If you're having rear passengers, 4-seat car, you're gonna wanna have those guys in the car too. So that's why I say sometimes it's more of, you know, a 2, 3, 4 person job. Yes, Matt?
We're being asked if these are heights with people in the car or without.
It's always gonna be with people in the car. So let me backtrack a little bit onto the initial setup point. That, you know, paragraph long thing that you guys fill out for all of your weights and accessories, we take that into accommodation when we set this stuff up for you. So when you get it back, if like I was just saying with the passenger side of things, if you have 4 people in the car, I want those 4 people in the car when you're setting up the ride height. You're still gonna shoot for those same numbers that we just looked at on the board, but that's gonna be fully weighted with all your accessories, all the people in it, all the information that you guys gave us. So hopefully that answers that. But yes, so with people in the car, if it's just you, like let's say my favorite car, the RS1, it'd be just me in it, right? So it'd be 2 people. I'd be in the car, drive it back and forth, kind of settle it, have somebody else measure it for me while you stay in the car. So we can show them that. Yep. I'd say let's show them where we measure at first, and then we can kind of, I want to judge the difference. So we'll measure it without anybody in it, and then we'll measure it with Steve, and then we'll measure it with Matt in it as well, and show you guys how much that changes with adding weight into the car. That's why it's super important. So yeah. You want to show them, Steve?
Sure. All right, guys, so on the rear, I'm gonna start at the rear just because we're behind the car already, and then we'll move our way forward. The way I like to do it is I do like to throw my tape measure onto the inside of the radius rod and measure down from there. The measurement point that we are looking for is right there on the skid plate. And it looks like we're 16 and like a quarter, okay? So we measure on the rear. If we move it to the front, I will go under the car, Josh, so you can get a better view. We measure the front, if you want to come from the top, Josh. As we go to the rear A-arm tab right there, right to the bottom of it, and it looks like we're at 17 and 3/4. But that is also with no weight in the car. Just tape measure.
So let's just have you hop in there first, Steve, and we'll show how much of a different change that is with adding people. So before I measure that for you, Steve, I want to throw in something else too. When you guys are like doing the initial sag, I guess if you will, come to a coasting stop. You don't want to come up, hit the brakes, have the front nosedive. That's going to give you an inaccurate measurement. But yeah, so Josh, let's go back into here.
Can I add something to that too real quick, Mitch? Adding to that too, guys, if you have a live valve car of any sort, leave the car running while you check your ride height.
Yep. So let's see where we're at here. I can't see that, Josh. What does that say?
You're asking the blind guy.
Here we go.
Oh my God.
Looks like 14 and 3/4 to me.
Yep.
Okay, so 14 and 3/4. If we look back at our guide over there, this is a stock tire. What does that tire say, Josh? Can you get close to that and show everybody what that tire says? As far as the height of it. What's that say, Josh?
29 by 9.00 R14.
Perfect. So, 29-inch tall tire. Another thing, we're kind of all over the place here. I apologize for that, guys, but we're trying to give you all the information at once. Something to look for. Now, even though your tire says it's a 29-inch tall tire, that's not always the case. The best way to do that is to physically take a tape measure to it and actually measure the tire. So if we're looking at this one, that tire says 29 inches on the sidewall. We're measuring about 27 and 3/4. So there's a big discrepancy there on the tire size itself that's stamped to the sidewall versus the actual measurement. So going off our chart, if we're, you know, a stock tire, let's keep that number there, but we know that it's actually a 27-inch tall tire. Our ride height's 14 and 3/4, so we're actually a little tall on that one. We need to lower that one down. The way to do that is basically, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, guys, or not, but Your top spring is going to be sitting against what we call the preload collar. That is the part that actually spins on the shock body, which can be moved up or down. Ride height is all going to be controlled through where this preload collar is set at on the shock body. So if you move that collar down, you're going to be adding tension to the whole spring system, which is then in return going to raise the car. If you raise the preload collar up, you take tension off the whole spring set, which will then in return lower the car. Our kind of rule of thumb with like the XPs, XPTs is a 1-to-2 ratio on the front. So if you need to go up a ½ inch, you're actually going to add a 1/4 inch of preload to it, vice versa if you need to lower the car. Kind of just a rule of thumb that we've used there. So in this case, we're 14 3/4. We need to be at 13 1/2. We'd probably take 3/8 of an inch out of it.
Yeah, maybe a ½ inch, yeah.
Yep, to attain our ride height there.
Now, Mitch, I got a question. Does tire pressure go into account when doing ride heights?
Yes, sir, it does. So tire pressure is one of those things that is personal preference, but like 12 to 15 pounds is a good tire pressure to start at to get your ride height set. That's a pretty good, accurate PSI measurement, if you will. That way, let's say you go to check your ride heights 2 years down the road or 6 months down the road, 3 months down the road, you can always set it back to that 15 PSI so you know your ride heights are always going to basically maintain the same height. So let's look at the rear, Josh. Let's look at the Josh rear. What'd you say your measurement was in the rear, Steve?
It was 17, I think. 16?
16. So we're at 14 inches now in the rear.
God, I'm fat.
So we're pretty close on the rear, but that's the best way to really like measure it, to see where you're at. Now, obviously, if this was something that you guys got back, you'd have to make a couple of adjustments to it, but I can't stress that enough. If it needs to be adjusted, you guys take the time to adjust it. This isn't like a good like how-to video to adjust ride heights. We're just kind of giving you guys the information of where to measure, because it is can be confusing from car to car, but all the XPs, the XPTs, this chassis style is going to be the same measuring points across the board. So, but as you noticed, how much that car actually dropped with just adding one person to the car changes the whole thing. So we went down, what, 2.5 inches?
2.5 inches in the front, almost 3 in the rear.
Yeah, so again, taking it into consideration when you guys send your stuff in, we accommodate for all the extra weight and stuff like that, while still giving you guys the adjustability part of it too. So if you need to raise it up a ½ inch or an inch or whatever it might be, there's options there with the preload adjustment to actually add it to the car or subtract it to the car. So, yeah. You guys got any questions?
They've been all getting answered.
Yeah, Store has been on here answering them. I told him to be on vacation. Talk to Elon.
Let's look at the Honda. That one's not going to be on the board, but we can at least show people where to measure it at. Yep. What's up, Matt?
Frontline Power Sports wants to know, are the crossover rings adjusted the same amount as the springs when making ride height adjustments?
Same amount as the springs? I would say no. We'll get into that after this, but I guess we can do it now. Ride heights first. Always, always, always make sure your ride heights are set first, and then you worry about the crossover setting after your ride heights are dialed in. So, rule of thumb for us, basically, on the rear of the car, I don't know, can you get in here, Josh? Basically, the bottom of the crossover ring, where that O-ring sits in the groove, we are looking for about a 2-inch gap from the bottom of that crossover to the top of this plastic divider. Now, typically, when you guys get this stuff back from us, it's going to be super close. I mean, I'm not saying you guys have to move the crossover, 2.5, 3 inches. You might move it a 1/4 inch to a ½ of an inch at a time, just depending on your ride height settings where you figure out to get that. But that's the last step to basically the ride height check. So the front, again, basically from the bottom of the crossover ring where the O-ring sits in the groove there, the front, we're looking for about 1.5 inches to 1 inch gap. Right now we're about 1.75 inches. We're still playing with this car here, but that's 1.5 inches to 1 inch is kind of your rule of thumb there. So something I do, when you guys go to check ride heights, you can loosen the crossovers before you even start the process. Let's say you nail the ride heights, they're exactly where you want your measurements. You don't have to take the shocks back off. You can just spin them where you need to, tighten them up, and you're done. So a little trick of the trade.
It's a pretty good question on here. It says, what about weight loss? COVID's got me fat AF. My gym just opened back up, so I'm going to be losing 30 pounds. My wife will still be fat with a PH. all right?
Oh.
30 pounds is not something to really mess with there. I wouldn't mess with a 30-pound difference. If you're gonna lose like 130 pounds, then we would talk there.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back into checking the ride heights. You know, we say once you get them back from us, after that first 100 to 300 miles for the initial set of the springs. And then it's not a bad idea to do it like annually. Let's say you're, you know, servicing the unit, you're doing an oil change, you're doing an air filter clean, you're greasing all the joints, your general maintenance stuff. You can add ride heights to that list too. So you go down your list, okay, now it's time to check ride heights, making sure that that just stays exactly where it needs to be. It's super important. Another thing with that, if you guys are adding or subtracting weight to your car. So let's say, you know, on the list, we asked you guys a bunch of questions about what spare tires, cages, seats. We take that all into consideration, even if it's future stuff. So if you guys are like, oh, you know, I'm thinking about doing a cage, I don't have it yet, that's still gonna be incorporated into the kit that you get from us. So you throw it on, you know, 3 months later, you finally get it. You have the ability to adjust that through the spring system to accommodate for the weight that you're adding onto it to still attain your ride height. So hopefully that answers some stuff too.
Yep.
What are you guys laughing about?
There's just some funny comments. I will not repeat them though. So you guys are doing good though. Mitchie, where do we measure on the back of the Talon?
Back of the Talon.
Shall we?
So going back to what we said earlier, all of these measuring points are going to be very, very similar across the board. So back of the Talon, lowest point of the frame, I like to go like in between, oh, we'll call it the point here where the radius rod meets the frame itself. So we're exactly 16 inches to that point right there. Now keep in mind guys, this is with nobody in the car as well.
Come here real quick, Josh. You got a schmutz on the camera. So. There we go.
So kind of you.
You're welcome.
And then in the front, so Josh, it's going to be that same. This is kind of a same measuring point to where basically where the lower A-arm connects to the frame on the back side of the mounting point. So I think we're what, 16 inches? What it looks like to me.
Yep.
So we're level right now basically with nobody in the car. Now this is a big misconception too. Guys will check it without people in the car, without the weight in the car. Got to have the driver in the car. So Matt, let's have you hop in this one.
Oh! Not enough spring for this man. Let me get the door for you, Matt. Oh God. That's a settle right there, old son.
Drive it back and forth, Matt, like you would.
He's answering like all the questions.
Alrighty, so we'll go back to the front here. So remember, we were at 16 inches.
Is that 11?
We're at 15 now.
Oh, sorry, Matt. Sorry, Matt. I thought it was 11.
Same spot that we measured before. Just showing you guys where that basically the location is. We dropped an inch just with Matt jumping in the car. It's actually pretty good there, buddy. So we'll go to the rear. And we were 16 in the rear as well. We are now at 14 and a half. So just by adding somebody to the car, that dropped another inch and a half. Basically lost an inch and a half of ground clearance. So that's why we say to always check it with you guys in the car. So same thing with the crossovers. Our crossover gap and location is going to be across the board no matter what car you have. 2 inches in the rear, inch to inch and a half in the front. Keep that in mind too, guys. So what else? I'm kind of...
Hey, Matt, people wanted to congratulate you for not wrecking. Just making sure that you guys check the two independently. So adjust the preload independently, adjust the crossover independently. Preload first, crossover comes second. Do we want to show them, Mitchie, on an X3? Because that one has a little bit of a variance on the front.
yeah, we definitely can.
I think we have an X3 in the shop. Let's go this way.
It's torn apart, I believe, right now, but we can still show them.
We can still show them the measuring port.
Yep.
Hey, does it matter what side of the car you measure it on?
We always do the driver's side. That's just kind of always been the way we measure it. So I would say the driver's side.
Because from where I was sitting, the car looked to be leaning a little bit.
Yeah, Honda's always.
Talons always have that Cali lean to the left.
Here, go ahead, Steve. This is.
Alrighty, let me do that. It's my baby. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So when setting the ride height on the front of a Can-Am, where we like to measure, if you come over here, Josh, from this angle, we like to measure from this point right here on the frame, okay? So we go down from there and right there. Now, obviously, we're jacked up. We're at about 24 3/8 on there, okay? But actually, where this point is an inch lower than the spot that we would normally measure from. So anytime you measure from this point, you always subtract an inch, okay? So if it's at 19, it's at 18. If it's at 18, it's at 17, so on and so forth. But you always want to make sure you subtract from an inch. The reason we measure from there is because there's another point that is up in here, but you do have to get under the car, lay on the ground and measure it. It's a lot easier to measure from this point, which is an inch lower. And then on the rear, it's the same exact thing as all the other cars. We come back here, Josh. We go right down to here and measure to the actual frame of the car. It looks like we're at about 23 inches.
Now that's obviously jacked up.
That's jacked
and not,
up.
you know, weight in the car and all that stuff. So a lot of negatives. So let's say you have an incorrect ride height, or you didn't check your ride height when you got your stuff back from us. Couple things to look out for. So bottom out. If you're driving the thing, didn't check it, didn't adjust the ride heights, you're having issues there, always look at that. Biggest complaint with like low ride height, especially in the rear, is bottom out, bottom out issues. So checking it, let's say you're supposed to be at 15 inches, you're at like 13 and a half. 2 inches is a big deal, man. That can change the way the whole car rides. So just something to kind of keep in mind there too.
A lot of people are asking kind of a general knowledge of what we like to see on the crossover gap. I don't know if you mentioned that all back there, but in the front, we typically like to see inch to inch and a half and 2 inches in the rear.
Yep.
And that is the gap between the divider and the crossover itself. And that goes pretty much car wide.
Yep. Yep. You want to go back there and go over the portal thing, and then
yep. Let's go over the portal real quick, and we can actually show them a couple portal cars too.
Yep.
We've got 2 in the shop today.
Let's actually show them that
yeah,
first.
we got 2 portal cars in the shop today. This one here, Josh, and this one here.
So Steve, let's show the sidewall of this tire here.
Yep.
Let's see what that says, and then let's actually measure it.
So the sidewall of this tire says 37 inches. Okay, 37, says it right down there. If we take a measurement to it, it actually is 35, and we'll say 3/8, possibly a half inch.
Big difference,
Big
guys.
difference.
Now tire wear too is also going to affect that too, but there's a ton of variables and differences in tires and all of that, but the math that's involved to measure your tire, see what the actual size of it is, and then calculate your ride heights off of that is super important too. So what we got for any questions?
Justin seems to be answering them all.
Justin, get off your phone.
Get off your phone, man.
Do you want to do this part, Steve?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. It's actually fairly simple when doing portals and doing the math on the portals, okay? So if your normal ride height on a stock tire is going to be 13 and a half, 13, depending on the size portal, I don't know how big they go. I've seen 8 inches. Do they have anything bigger than 8? I don't know. So that I can't answer. But what you would do is you would just add whatever the inch to that portal is to the actual math. So again, stock tires, 29 inches, we got 13 and a half, 13. If you added a 4-inch portal, your ride height would be 17 and a half, 17. For a 30, you'd be 18, 17 and a half. 31, 32, you'd be looking at 19, 18 and a half inches, just adding the 4 inches to the stock number that we have come up with.
Yep.
Also coming over to the X3, a little bit different, but the same exact thing. All you're doing is adding the 4 inches to the numbers of the ride heights that we would set it to. So if we're just going straight to 35 or a 37, obviously you would add more from there. But if we're going straight from a 35 and adding a 4-inch portal, you do 18.5 plus 4. You're looking at 22.5 in the front, 22 in the rear. Mitch, can you set a car up level?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've just always kind of had the rule of thumb to, you know, do a 1/2 inch lower in the rear, especially if you have like a spare tire or anything like that. Let's say you want to take the spare tire off. It's better to gain a 1/2 inch than lose a 1/2 inch by putting a tire on when you're already, you know, set up to be a 1/2 inch lower. So, yeah, level, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
People are asking, Mitchie, does long travel take into effect on your ride height?
Yes,
Which,
it does.
Yes, it does.
It does. We didn't really want to put that onto the board because we weren't trying to get super in detail on it, but yes, it does. So you're basically adding, I would say, another 1/2 inch?
It's usually about a 1/2 inch, yeah.
To ride height.
Justin's saying an inch. I would typically run a 1/2 inch. So on a 32, if you had a long travel kit, you would be at 15.5, 15 on our setup, depending on what the long travel is. Now, I don't know. 3 plus, is that the biggest long travel? Again, I don't know. I don't know if they make a 12-inch portal or how I don't know how big they go, right? But typically about a 1/2 inch to an inch.
Yep. Now with portals too, guys, the actual measurement is going to be what the portal is. Like Steve said, tire height is going to be 1/2 inch increments each size you go up in tires. So something to keep in mind there too. But yeah, what else you guys got for
We have a specific question for you, Mitch, from Jared_Urban. So, Mitch, would you be confident letting Dom set my car when he is done with it?
Letting Dom set up his car?
Just the way you answered that? Absolutely not.
No, I just got excited when I heard Dom's name.
Yes.
Yeah, I would. Dom knows this stuff. He knows how to set ride heights. He's very knowledgeable on that stuff as well. So, yep. Matt?
Does shock settings affect toe? Is it better to be toe in or toe out?
Always better to be toe in. Shock settings affect toe, like compression settings.
I wonder. So possibly, or I wonder if he means will ride height affect toe?
Right, it definitely
can. Yeah,
it definitely can. Shock setting though, like a high speed,
low speed, no
adjustment. That's not really going to affect the toe side. But yeah, always toed in. We say about an 1/8 to a 1/4 inch toed in is kind of the rule of thumb there. So
that's all I got, man.
Anything else?
That's it.
Let's get out of here. Let's
get out of here. Well, first off, before we go, I do want to congratulate some of our Shock Therapy sponsored riders. We had Chapo Racing, Kristen Matlock, Wayne Matlock, Lucretia Burrier, Nick Bruce, Wes Miller, and Phil Blurton. Congratulations, guys, in the San Felipe 250. Badass. Congratulations on the finish. Really, really proud of you guys. But if you guys are looking to buy anything off of our website, please visit the website, www.shocktherapist.com, or if you have any questions, please call in at 623-217-4959.